So this is something different. Winter, welcome to the Transport Evolved studio.
It's actually my second time in the studio.
Shh. With me.
It is my first time with you, yes.
Although technically I was present when you were filming the video the other day.
That's true. But
we
weren't
were
on
on
camera together, yeah.
So this is the first time we've done a 2-up in what is a very small studio.
A very small studio. Looking forward to
getting a proper studio, which we need to do. And if you want to support us, please do so by going to Patreon. There will be links below. But we're not here to talk about Patreon. We're not here to talk about the studio. We're here to talk about somewhere we went on Monday last week. Where did we go?
We went to the Portland International Raceway. It was, in fact, my very first time on a raceway. As a kid, I'd been to races, but I'd never been out on a track before.
And it was your first time in Portland properly since moving.
Yeah, it was also my first time meeting most of the Transport Evolved team.
Right. So Winter had literally just arrived in Portland the day before.
Yeah.
At very early o'clock in the morning. You'd had the Sunday to recuperate after not very much sleep, and then I picked you up very early on the Monday morning. I picked up Erin and I picked up Kit, and we all headed to the Portland International Raceway to the Arcimoto FUV and Friends. And the reason we're making this is because it was extremely hot.
Yeah.
You were extremely tired, having just moved.
I was tired, and you'll notice that I am quite scruffy today. That's because even though we're almost 2 weeks out, I got terribly sunburned that day and haven't been able to shave yet.
Right. And I got terribly sunburnt, and you had heat stroke after.
I did.
I think most people on the team had heat stroke after.
Certainly at least heat exhaustion. Certainly,
but the point of this day was to showcase Arcimoto's latest technology, how the company has grown. Arcimoto being an Oregon-based company. We've done some great videos in the past on how Arcimoto has broken the rules. In fact, there is one just here that you can go watch above Winter's head, talking about how Arcimoto has broken the rulebook and done everything that it technically shouldn't be capable of doing lest it fails, but it did it anyway and seems to be succeeding.
Now, I will say that I went into this event very much an Arcimoto skeptic.
Right.
I really did. I thought they were cool. I watched your review of your long-term review when you had one for like a long weekend, and I thought they really looked cool, but I went into it very much thinking, great, some more rich people toys. And that's not where I ended the event. I came away with a very different feeling about what Arcimoto is doing and what an Arcimoto is.
Right.
I think that was the biggest thing, is that even though you were very clear in your review of the Arcimoto FUV that it is what it is and that Arcimoto set out to make something really legitimately unique, I still went into it feeling like, all right, this is either going to feel like a motorcycle or it's going to feel like a car. I don't know which it's really going to be. And no, it feels like an FUV or like a Roadster. It is an Arcimoto, and it isn't quite like anything I've ever been behind the steering controls of.
Very cleverly put there, steering controls of. For those who don't know, the Arcimoto, originally it started off with a steering wheel, and we actually had a small Arcimoto prototype there.
And it was, yeah, the prototype was so lovely because they're this very 1930s
it did have that Art Deco feel,
that and it had a little tiny steering wheel. But no, today Arcimoto controls are very much sort of motorcycle or ATV controls, and in fact most of what you interact with is repurposed from the motorcycle and ATV world to meet sort of what Arcimoto needs them to do.
And Arcimoto I think that's probably one of the things that's very different from a lot of companies. Arcimoto went through, I think, 8 prototypes before actually reaching a production intent vehicle. It started off on a very small scale production line, and now it's just purchased a new production facility, is getting that ready to make larger scale vehicles. It's got a target price of $12,000. Right now, I think it's closer to 18.
Yeah, so I mean, I really had a good time with the FUV, and I got out of it and definitely thought, like, this is a vehicle I can imagine owning for my use case here in Oregon. but not at $18,000.
Right.
10, 12? I mean, if you're talking 12,000 with the boot, which is not stock, and maybe with doors, you're getting to a vehicle that I can really imagine choosing for myself and my needs.
Right.
Especially because we got to see some really interesting new stuff from Arcimoto at this event, some of which has me very excited.
We'll come to that in a second.
Absolutely.
So let's start off beginning of the event. Lots of people there. Governor Kate Brown, the governor of Oregon, was there, and she was very excited about what Arcimoto had done. The CEO, Mark Frohnmayer, his father was an Oregon politician for many years, so there is definitely a connection there to the political world. Mark has really led the company in a very unusual and pragmatic way. Unlike a lot of company CEOs, Mark is a very practical, down-to-earth guy. And when the event started, or even before the event started, one thing that caught my attention on Twitter was that Arcimoto went, we're just leaving. We're leaving where we're based now, and we're heading north. They're based in Eugene, and they were heading north, riding the Roadsters there.
Yeah, that was really exciting.
Really exciting and very unique. Most car companies just put all the vehicles on a trailer and ship it up. They actually rode up all the way up the I-5 to Oregon to be ready the next day. And Mark Frohnmayer was among the people
riding,
taking those vehicles, which I think is a real, that's a very aspirational leadership position. Rather than being, oh, you go do those things, he was actually part of that convoy, which I think engenders a lot of warm fuzzies to anybody who learns that the CEO is getting their hands dirty and getting involved. So there was a big stage presentation where they talked about, where they've come from, where they're going. We also got to see some prototype vehicles and some new designs for Arcimoto for the first time. So the first responder was there, which we'd seen previously a year ago when Erin and I went down to their headquarters and saw them firsthand. We also had, obviously, the Roadster production version of the Roadster, which we got to ride. We'll come to that in a second. They also had a pickup version, a utility version.
So that was interesting because I heard Mark saying that I believe it was the Forestry Service that came to them and said, like, we really want something with a bed. Can you give us something with a bed? I seem to recall that's what you were saying. And what I thought was really cool about the pickup bed is that the company they've partnered with, the bed is not very wide. And it's expandable.
Right.
So it can be quite narrow because the footprint of an FUV or a Roadster, the footprint of an Arcimoto isn't that huge.
Right.
And that they can then expand that to as they need. I thought that was really, really cool.
I also liked the fact that they had the Roadster with the pup pods.
I believe that's Mark's.
That is Mark's personal vehicle.
Yes.
So Mark is a dog lover. The idea of having an Arcimoto Roadster with a side pod in that you can either put extra luggage in or you could have your dog sit there, I thought was brilliant. But we also saw a remote controllable vehicle.
The goal isn't autonomy, which I thought was interesting. The idea, the goal is the feeling of autonomy from the user perspectives. The idea is you need to rent an Arcimoto, and instead of building an enormous autonomous system into this, it would be remote controlled from a central location, and someone would just drive the Arcimoto to you under remote control. And I don't know how I feel about that.
Well, it's existed for a long time.
I completely understand the idea behind it. I think the regulatory side of it could be a huge challenge, but that's not our problem. It's very clever. Certainly, it's very clever. And the idea of being able to rent an Arcimoto and have it just show up at my house, that certainly does appeal.
Absolutely. I know that remote control of EVs has been around for a while. Nissan has been using it with some of its next generation ProPilot technology. It demonstrated at CES a couple of years ago how you could use autonomous driving to deal with 90% of the driving challenges, like a level 3 or a level 4, and then you'd have remote drivers that would jump into the car effectively remotely and control the car around things that the car found that were unexpected, like a construction zone or something. Now, in the real world, I don't know what the applicability of that is, because the last thing you want is to be sat in traffic with your autonomous vehicle while it alerts a person in a remote location to jump into your car virtually and drive you around. You'd just grab the steering wheel and do it yourself. But that's existed for a while. Obviously, Waymo uses a very similar telematics system in its cars, even though the cars are driving themselves 90% of the time. They are still, as I understand, remotely supervised. So if there is a problem, someone can get behind the wheel virtually and take control of the vehicle. But this is the first time I've seen this remote control from a non-fully autonomous vehicle. But it was very exciting to see. We saw a short demonstration of a vehicle being driven away.
I mean, the thing that strikes me is that the Arcimoto, it's a very simple vehicle. And to outfit a very simple and not very big vehicle with that level of tech is really interesting to me. And what it sort of says about the capabilities of the vehicle. I mean, Waymo's using minivans. There's lots of room to cram extra computers and stuff in a minivan. There's not a lot of room to cram a bunch of extra stuff into an Arcimoto, which is, I think, part of what made it impressive to me.
There's going to be some other things that we're going to be featuring in separate videos. You got a chance to drive a prototype vehicle that we were initially not going to be allowed to drive. And then I think someone from our team kind of talked very nicely to the Arcimoto press team, and they know us, and they said, okay, you can take it around the track. You're going to be doing a video on that.
I am.
I'm going to be doing a video talking to Sandy Monroe from Monroe and Associates, and just to head up, our audio didn't work when we were recording that, which we'll put down to me being an idiot. But luckily, Sandy and his team had a recording that they were able to share. The quality of that recording is not quite as high as our kit would have been. So we're going to take a while to try and bring the quality of that up so that we can bring you that. And then we had a lovely chat with Ricky from 2-Bit Da Vinci, who was there. We've got that coming as well. And while Ricky and I were talking, Mark Frohnmeyer literally just gate crashed our on-camera chat. So we ended up interviewing him as well. That's going to be a slightly longer video. This is all going to take a while to edit. But right now, what we're going to do is take a bit of a spin round the raceway in both the Arcimoto FUV, which was your first time behind the controls
of an Arcimoto at all.
Talk about that, and then we'll talk about the Roadster.
I had a good time. I enjoyed being out in the FUV. It was so unexpected, the experience, that I don't know if I had a chance to really enjoy it, because I was so focused on what the hell is this?
Right.
I was really trying to understand the experience, because it was so unlike anything I'd ever ridden.
And having the seatbelt on, the cross boob seatbelt, if I like to call it, because obviously for women, it's a crossed boob seatbelt. That is very disorientating if you are a biker, because you're used to having the flexibility of movement.
Yeah, it definitely is a weird experience. And I certainly, I'm all strapped into the FUV, which has a roll cage. And next to me, someone's on a Roadster with no restraint at all and no roll cage.
And because we were filming in Oregon, you didn't need to wear a crash helmet, but because we wanted to capture your experience, we did have a helmet for you and a camera. The other thing, obviously, is the geometry of steering the FUV, which has a very heavy front end.
So when you're on a motorcycle and you counter steer a motorcycle, if I'm on a motorcycle and I want to go right, I'm going to press on the right handlebar, and that's going to cause me to drop, and I'm going to turn. Obviously, none of that happens on an Arcimoto. You have to sort of turn the handlebars the direction you want to go. So that was a little bit weird. The steering is... So I knew the steering was heavy. I do really like how the steering weights up going into a turn. Although, man, it will badly understeer if you're not careful.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, will it understeer? And there's no powering through it. I went into one turn where I went in a little hot, and I was like, oh, we're not turning. we're not turning enough. And I, being a motorcyclist, opened the throttle thinking I'll power through it. And I was like, oh no, I'm just headed right for the apex now.
And it's going to straighten it up.
I'm just going to go off if I don't ease. And I hit the regen and I was like, all right, I slowed it down and was able to do it. I was like, all right, so that's a lot. The thing I was really unprepared for, and I'm going to talk about this later, actually in a different video, is I knew that at a stop, it was hard to turn an Arcimoto. No, it's not. The wheels might as well be set in concrete. A friend of ours described it really well. He said the Arcimoto is a lot like a jet ski.
Right.
In that you have to have a bit of forward momentum to have any turning happen. Once I relaxed into it a bit, I got a feel for it a little bit. It is properly fun, but it's not a pure experience at all. I very much felt like, oh, the utility in FUV is absolutely been the focus as much as the fun has. Like, I very much felt like I was controlling a vehicle which was compromised in order to be a lot of things at once in a way that I think you can really embrace. But if you're coming from, you know, like a motorcycle background, you're expecting something which is sort of more unbridled and fun, that's not what it is. But, I mean, you can carry a lot of stuff in it. If I was going to buy one, honestly, I would buy a Deliverator. I would skip the second seat entirely, and I would buy a Deliverator.
It's interesting that you're talking about the steering and how your experience with the counter steering. So for me, I still push like I would on a bike.
But you push on the other side.
I push on the other side, and
which is
I lean.
Yeah, I did not lean at all in the FUV. I was strapped in and I was like, nope, I'm strapped in and I'm just gonna be here.
If you want to go round a corner fast, you have to lean heavily on the... So if you're going right, you lean on the left.
Right, which is backwards to a motorcycle.
You lean on the left, and then you lean to the right. So you're pushing and leaning.
Yeah.
And then you're pushing and leaning.
I think the other thing, and you had warned me about this, and I think this actually comes up in your video with Sandy. I am used to electric vehicles having such low centers of gravity that you can just chuck the hell out of them and trust in the fact that, like, you could, if you paid me $10,000, I would struggle to roll my Model 3. I think I would struggle to roll my Bolt. I got a wheel up on the Arcimoto.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I think I had Aaron in the back when that happened, but I got a wheel up, and Aaron sort of went, "Woo!" Because I was like,
Aaron style,
and I was like, "Oh, because it is, you know, it is stable. You don't. I mean." It's not like Clarkson's ridiculous thing where he bastardized a Reliant Robin so it would flip over easily.
Yeah, and for those who watched that video when Jeremy Clarkson went round a corner in a Reliant Robin and he tipped it over
and over.
They had to actually remove part of the suspension system.
So would you
to get it to do that.
Not that Reliant Robins are the most stable cars in history, but his video is ridiculous. So it doesn't feel like that, but it definitely feels like you have to. This is a vehicle whose limits you have to respect. Yeah, and you have to learn them, and they're not hard to learn.
No,
but you definitely have to respect them.
And a shout out to Aging Wheels if you want to see a really good video on Reliant Rialto, which I think is the one that he has. Go subscribe to his channel, Aging Wheels.
He's such a great channel.
He's also got a Coda EV. He's got 3 Coda EVs that he's trying to keep one of them on the road. So we're hoping at some point we can do a crossover with him.
Absolutely.
But. Okay, so you enjoyed the FUV.
I enjoyed the FUV. My big takeaway was, 1, unlike anything I'd ever driven before. 2, as much utility as fun. And 3, this is a vehicle I could 100% see in my garage.
Right. And the steep learning curve. Steep learning curve to learn how to drive it properly.
but not very tall.
Right.
Like, you have to... I halfway around the track, I felt like, all right, I understand this thing now. But that first half around the track, I definitely was like, oh, it's a good thing they're limiting how fast we're allowed to go.
So, round town, the Arcimoto is a great vehicle. If you haven't driven one before, you can get used to it pretty quickly. I live in the country, so kind of learning how to drive it at speed in the country takes a little bit of practice, especially on the corners when you've got adverse camber.
And it's worth noting that Nikki lives on one of the more fun roads I've driven in a long time.
You haven't driven Skyline yet. We need to get you up on Skyline on a bike.
Yeah.
That needs to happen. All right, so now we went out on the Roadster. Our first time on the Roadster. The Roadster is basically an Arcimoto FUV without a roll cage, without seatbelts, with a bike-style body.
Without traditional seats.
Right.
It's, there's a tiny little backrest.
There's a Harley-Davidson-style backrest for both driver and passenger.
Which neither of us really like.
I didn't like it because I tend to sit further forwards and I like to grab the tank with my knees, which is how I was taught to ride a bike. Riding a horse, riding a bike, and playing a cello have one thing in common: you grip with your knees. There are plenty other things that are in common where you grip with your knees, but we're not going there.
No. So the Roadster, again, your and my experience of the Roadster were very different.
Well, let's take a look.
Okay, so this is the new Roadster, the Arcimoto Roadster. Now, I've driven the FUV before, and it's a really nice vehicle. I've really enjoyed driving it before. It's a fun vehicle in the FUV variant, but I always maintained that what I'd rather have was a motorbike style variant, and this is what we've got here. Winter is on a Roadster, I am on a Roadster. I'm on a special variant of the Roadster. This variant here is actually a special version that belongs to Mark Frunmeier, the CEO of Arcimoto, and he has a special modification in his Arcimoto Roadster, and that's one that allows you to have dogs sitting next to you in the vehicle as you're riding along, which I think is particularly wonderful. I really enjoyed that.
Actually maintaining like a single set speed, even with the regen and the throttle, I'm finding very, very challenging, which is really quite aggravating. I will say, this feels very different than FUV. More different than I think I had expected it to feel. In that, like, now I feel like I'm on a bike. And it's not just that I don't have a cage around me, although that is a piece of it, that I don't have a cage. It's also the riding position is very... I want to lean into it in a way that I absolutely didn't in the FUV. I want to lean in. I want to give it throttle. The Roadster feels a little bit more playful, and I think that's just because I'm a motorcyclist and I'm not inside a cage. So I'm used to, when you're in the FUV, you think car a little bit more than you do when you're on this. On this, you think motorcycle in a different way than you do on the FUV.
Now, obviously, I have driven the FUV before. When you have the roof on and you have the windshield on, it does feel very much like a bit of a weird cross between what you would normally have as a motorbike rider and what you might get as somebody in a small runabout. But on the Roadster, I've got to say, this feels a whole lot better. Now, because of issues with the PIR right now, we are having to ride this particularly slowly because of safety requirements, and we're not allowed to go above a certain speed. We have to be particularly safe about this. And so Winter and I are driving pretty slowly. We're driving at 13 miles an hour. We did both go out earlier around the track on a Roadster, and we were able to go a lot faster. And I've got to say that it was pretty impressive, especially on the corners. Now, as we go around this corner, normally at normal speeds, you're able to counter steer and lean into the scooter. And one of the things that I really enjoyed about that was it felt like I was more connected to the road than I might with any other three-wheeler.
I still don't think this feels like a motorcycle. It really doesn't. Like, it's a powered cycle, but it doesn't feel like a motorcycle. It doesn't lean, is a big part of it. And it just doesn't... It feels very cool. I just drove cross-country in the Model 3, and weirdly, although the FUV objectively would be a better fit, neither's a good fit because they don't, have DC fast charging, but I can imagine taking this cross-country, and I can't imagine the FUV for that. The FUV feels like a city runabout, and this feels like a toy. We're going quite slowly here because we're working with a camera car, and I will say that at the speed we're going, steering is not remotely easy. You really need a bit of pep on the throttle to be able to get it to steer well. God, do I want one? Is a question I just don't know the answer to. But it is dynamically really interesting. Nikki had said before that Arcimoto isn't trying to make motorcycles and they're not trying to make cars. They're trying to make Arcimotos. And I think that's just incredibly true. There is no argument to that. This isn't like any other vehicle I've ever ridden or ever driven. It's just something else. And that's interesting. Is it fun? Yes, we're limited by the track a bit, by track rules, and this being, a shoot. It is fun. I want to just open the throttle up, and of course, being an EV, that's really not the best idea because efficiency-wise, that's just going to be absolute shit. Nikki's talked about the fact that you get much above 55 miles an hour and these things start to really lose range. This thing's been going around the track all day. It still has 54% battery life. I talk for a living, and it's hard to know what to say about this thing because it just defies convention. It's not a car. It's not a motorcycle. I've said that multiple times already, and that is the biggest takeaway, is that it's hard to know what this is. And I think that's just because it is wholly and unapologetically itself. And that's really cool. It's rare that you come across something that is just so itself.
One of the things I didn't really like about the FUV was the fact that you had those seatbelts on, which felt it was very restrictive. Now, obviously, without a seatbelt, I feel that I can really make some moves. Now, as we're coming into this corner here, I'm going to exaggerate, obviously. You push, and the bike just moves around quite happily. And it allows you to really push through as you're going around that corner. And it gives you some really good handling. It's really excellent. One of the original criticisms of the FUV when I rode it was that there was nowhere to store my stuff. Now we don't have to worry about that because we have a storage tank right in front. And the storage tank really gives me plenty of space to store things. And it's easily accessible. It's just under this lockable tank here.
It's not what I expected. The FUV wasn't what I expected. And the Roadster doesn't feel like a toy version of the CUV. It feels like you're driving the platform on which other things are going to be built. And that platform can be fun, but it does feel like you're driving the platform.
So we were a bit disjointed, partly because we only got to go around once.
Yeah.
Partly because, as I said, we had to go extremely slowly because we wanted to go out in tandem.
Yeah.
And they were like, sure, you can do that, but you have to drive really slowly because otherwise we're going to get thrown off the track and banned from the track.
Right.
It was right at the end of the day. Their head PR person, John, was driving a regular FUV.
Yeah.
Erin was sitting in the back seat with a gimbal. filming us.
Yeah.
And then we were driving round in tandem. And at the end, I think you got bored and took off, and then I took off, and then...
I thought you were waving me to do so.
Oh, right. Okay. Blame your boss.
Absolutely. All on you.
We did have fun.
Yeah, no, the Roadster is fun.
And we went out, so I should probably note, we went out before we filmed
Yeah.
on the Roadster without cameras.
You
first.
did, I didn't.
Okay.
So what did you, as someone who has a fair amount of FUV experience, what did you think of the Roadster?
The Roadster is by far more fun than the FUV.
How much of that is how it handles and how much of that is how you sit on it?
I think it's about 50-50.
All right.
I think it's got a better centre of gravity because it doesn't have all of that stuff up top. And I think it also has a whole lot of extra handleability because you're not restrained by the seatbelts.
Yeah, that's true. I liked the feel of it. My takeaway from the Roadster was that the FUV, to me, feels like a complete vehicle. The FUV, to me, feels like this is what they set out to make. They made it. It's everything it needs to be and nothing more. On the Roadster, I very much felt like, oh, I'm driving the platform on which all the Arcimoto stuff gets built.
Yeah.
But it didn't feel to me like a vehicle I understood as well as I understand the FUV. I get the FUV, and I didn't get the Roadster. I enjoyed the Roadster. It was cool. I'm a motorcyclist. I prefer the wind in my face. I prefer being able to lean.
Even if you've got a helmet.
Even if you've got a helmet on. I prefer being able to lean a bit. I prefer not to be restrained. I like the feeling of freedom that comes with the Roadster. But I know who the FUV is for.
Yeah.
I came with the Roadster going, I don't know who would buy this thing.
Oh, I would.
Would you though?
Yeah, no, I definitely would. But that's for multiple reasons. One of them being, I have a heart condition which makes motorcycle riding a bit of a questionable action for me.
But is that what you would choose?
I think I'd probably do that over say a four-wheel small micro car.
What about a three-wheel leaner?
Oh, a three-wheel leaner would be awesome, but
Yeah.
there aren't that many to choose from that aren't stupidly expensive. In fact, I can't think of any.
I mean, the Roadster's not pennies.
No, the Roadster's not pennies, but I think they're going to bring that down in price
I
as
think
well.
they will too.
One thing I would say that would make the Roadster so much better would be elimination of the footboards and giving us proper pegs and a proper motorcycle style brake.
Yeah.
For those who don't know,
I would enjoy it a lot more without footboards, I do think.
The FUV and the Roadster have a foot brake that's situated further forwards than your feet would normally be, which is in line with maybe where you would have it on a Harley, for example.
It's in a cruiser. It's in a
cruiser position.
Yeah.
Because of the way it's set up, I want to ride it with my feet up, with my knees forwards, my ankles on my feet back, and the ability, should I want to put my feet just down on the ground. And I want to have a foot peg to rest my feet on. Because if you're riding a Roadster, generally, unless you're not an ATGAT rider, and we are both ATGAT riders,
Yeah, we are.
you're going to be wearing boots. And there is something inherently uncomfortable about having your motorcycle boots flat on anything.
Yeah,
Motorcycle
I agree.
boots are designed to be hooked around a peg.
Yeah.
And having that foot brake in a more traditional motorcycle position would make me feel a lot more comfortable about riding it.
I can totally see that. I think I would enjoy it more, a little bit more like that.
Because then you're you're also holding the bike or the trike in a more conventional way.
I think I would enjoy the Roadster 50% more if it was shorter. The Roadster feels very long to me for what it is. And don't get me wrong, I did have fun on it. I just came away feeling like this makes sense with a pickup bed on the back. It doesn't make as much sense like this. Sort of as the configuration it's in. I would love to see it shortened, and I think it would make more sense next to it would make more sense next to a Can-Am three-wheeler if it was a bit shorter. or if it was enclosed differently, it could be a little bit more like a slingshot. But it's an odd beast.
But still a fun one.
Still absolutely a fun one. Doesn't feel as complete. Although I will say, between the two of them, getting on and off / in and out of the Roadster is so much nicer than getting your leg over in the FUV. That I was in the FUV several times over the course of the day, and I never didn't feel awkward in it.
It's just getting in.
Yeah.
Because you have to get over the seat. It's a traditional seat. And then getting over the hump in the middle where the batteries are. It's kind of complicated.
And it's really easy and comfortable to get on the Roadster. Much more so.
So thanks to Arcimoto for having us at the PIR.
Yeah.
There are 3-4 more videos coming.
Something
We'll
like
be
that.
doing one with an Arcimoto that you think, from an accessibility point of view, is going to be a game changer.
I think not just from accessibility. So the best accessibility sort of things are universal. They make things accessible to people with some form of disability, but also make things better for everyone else. And I think that is brilliant, and I'm very excited to talk to you about it.
But that's going to be another video,
It is.
as are the interviews with Sandy Munro and the collaboration with Ricky from 2-Bit Da Vinci. So if you haven't already, make sure that you're subscribed. That's it for today. If you liked the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and our other 2 channels, as Transport Evolved Take 2 and Transport Evolved Shorts. We know that while a fair few of you are already subscribed, many more aren't. So go on, hit that bell and help us out.
Let us know below what you thought of this video. If you're not someone who likes the YouTube's comment section, because who does, then why not continue this on our Discord server? It's free, and we'll leave a link below.
Thanks on behalf of the entire TE crew go out to the folks on our right for being our $15 to $49 a month Patreon supporters. Special thanks to our $50 a month patrons. That's Andrew Martin, Guido Drahoa, Brophy Wolf, Anonymous Freak, Ray Jean Fellows, Carl Hodgson, Gordon C, Paul Conway, Laura Sanborn, Anthony Coates, Denny Hyde, Sean Ueda, and Tazla in the Gong. And our deepest gratitude to our $100 a month Patreon supporters, John Lyons, Marcel Ward, Reggie Watts, JP Fagerback, Will Graylin, and Ian.
If you'd like to join the ranks of our wonderful supporters, you'll find links below to Patreon, Bitcoin, and Ko-fi. And of course, you can buy your very own tea swag at a Redbubble store. Thanks for joining us, and as always, keep evolving.